weer praat. Gilde, hy het net Gilde. Nederlands. All good when I'm talking, the back? It's already in, yeah. No problem. Yeah, yeah.
They've got a pointer as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then, okay, yeah, I know this. Standard.
Thank you, thank you. Prof Joseph, should we get going? Faculty Economic Management Sciences. It's wonderful to be here at Northwest University Business School. And it's really my privilege to introduce Professor of Practice. I don't know him with that fancy title, but just Adriaan't Gilde, an old acquaintance and friend of mine. Just briefly on his CV a bit. Art started at the same university that I finished my pre-doctoral. It's called Erasmus University in Rotterdam. While I did my work at the ISS, he was at the university proper and finishing his M in business economics way back in the early 1980s. In 1984 to 1986, he was in Amsterdam at the Free University, at the Economic and Social Institute as a young economist working there. And then in 86 to 89, he joined Bull. Company's name is BULL. It's actually the forerunner of a company in hardware development, computer development, of ERP systems. Later on, you are aware of SAP that developed. Now, that is where Art started in Amsterdam Bull. Then he moved to Switzerland, to Zurich, also still with Bull, working with them from, I believe, 89 to 92. And in 92, he joined Bernina, especially for those of us that are good with our hands, that like to do knitting and sewing. So for 6 years, he was first the IT manager of Bernina, quite a well-known brand in the clothing business. And then he was also the supply chain manager for Bernina. In 99, he joined Geberit. Many of you, if you walk into I would say an upmarket bathroom or toilet, you will see Geberit. It's the second or one of the biggest sanitation companies in Europe. And when Art retired last year in 23, I was at the big retirement function as well, where he posed a question to me to address to some CEOs and other people in his industry. But when he retired, he was then head of the corporate purchasing of the company, like the 2IB. And his budget was around 1.6 billion euro that he was presiding over. To give you an idea, it's 32 billion rand. I believe it's almost the total of 10 South African university budgets that actually he had to oversee and purchasing from all over the world. So he has a vast array of experience. Christine, now you need to just put up the other slide for me. So this is the formal introduction of Adriaan't Gilde, and I'm so happy that he joined the business school as a professor of practice. This is the part that you will not find on his CV, and you will excuse me for this. Many, many moons ago, in 1978-79, Art was like a semi-professional young cyclist. He leads the Belgium team. The older people in the room would know names like Alan van Heerden, Robbie McIntosh, Erkies Besaidenout, and Tony Impey. Those were the people that Art actually did cycle with. And when I picked him up yesterday at the airport, I asked him, Art, now that you are retired, how is the cycling going? He said, well, it's going better. I've done 5,810 kilometers already for this year. Now, believe me, to cycle around Potchefstroom or in the Free State in the Northern Cape, that's a different thing than to cycle in Switzerland because the topography is something different. So Art is an avid cyclist, and the pictures that you see here are quite iconic. You'll see him to the right there when he was leading the Belgian team as a youngster. And at the bottom, I always mock him about, all the feminine beauty around him. I think there's like 2 or 3 Miss South Africans just before he departed. And Christine made the remark, his face says everything. The smile when he was... Anyway, and last year when Dr. Jordan was also present, when Art did his first presentation, I went and I showed Art Paris, where he finished as the winner for one of the stages, because he wanted to see from Welcome to Paris, how is the entry still. And he also did another win from Potch to Carltonville. And as I was driving him yesterday, he said to me, this long hill you can still remind before you turn left to Carltonville. It was in a strong wind and rain, and it was tough. So Art is an avid cyclist. The second thing, maybe also personal, Art loves South Africa a lot. He has many, many ties. He loves South African wine. He's actually a wine connoisseur. His wife has done the highest sommelier course that you can think of, and he knows all the estates in and around the Western Cape. Last year, I was privileged that he introduced me to 2 or 3 that I didn't know. And just a brief story to conclude. We were at Lomond. I'm not sure whether you know Gansbaai, Hermanus, that area. So it's quite a new estate. And there was a very young sales lady there. And after a while, we tasted wine. She stepped to me. She patted me on my shoulder and said, "Sir, you should just remember, if you don't buy something, then it will be like 2 or 250 per person for the wine tasting." And I said, no. Just wait. I think, Art, my friend, will buy some wine. So in the end, when he bought 10 boxes, because sometimes he will buy 800 or 1,000 bottles of wine with friends in Switzerland, she turned around to her friend and said in Afrikaans, and I will translate, "Hierdie oom het ons turnover 'n moerse hupstoot gegee. This uncle has given our turnover a big push." So she was very surprised to see that they've, signed for 10 boxes. Anyway, Adriaan't, enough about you, but welcome here. We're looking forward to learn from your wisdom. And also you will see the title is also like a combination of the geopolitical tensions, but also his life of experience in international procurement. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for hosting us, Prof. Joseph and the other members of the business school.
Thank you very much, Lucius. What Lucius did not tell is that we know each other since 2007. We are close friends, and of course we don't see each other every day, at least not physically. He visited me and my wife a few times in Switzerland, several times, also with his tennis-playing daughters more than 10 years ago. And I'm very honored to be here, and I hope I really can tell you some interesting things from my rich experiences as a CPO, so a corporate procurement officer. That's the official title in the meantime at the Geopolitical sanitary company. I need to change now to my slide. In the meantime, sometimes I'm a bit hyperactive. I like to walk a little bit back and forth. In the meantime, I must say I like dialogue, so not wait till the end for questions and answers. Just raise your hand and ask your questions. I like the dialogue, and there are many topics that can be asked questions about a lot. Of course, today the topic is quite the topic I think you choose, Prof. Joseph, is a topic that is at the moment very actual, very trendy, because the world is confronted now with a lot of political tensions, geopolitical tensions as it is called nowadays. It's changing every day, and finding your way and navigating as a procurement officer in such an international environment, and the company I worked with the last 25 years was, I mean, they make their sales mainly in Europe, 90%, although they have also an interesting office or a business in South Africa, located with a warehouse in Johannesburg. There's about 50 people. You said, how do you call it, upscale restaurants, hotels, houses, etc. More and more, by the way, they do a great job. But the purchasing side from Geopolitical is much more international. So we have big suppliers from also from Eastern Europe, but then also from Asia, mainly China, but also Korea, Thailand, a bit Vietnam is coming, a bit Japan, so quite international. And I made my experience in all these countries. And usually if we say Asian, we say Asian food, Asian culture, it doesn't exist. Like I think also African. You have South Africa, you have all the other countries, and they all differ, not only in terms of language, but also in terms of food and way of behaving, how we define a culture. So I've made a lot of, must be careful, a lot of experience here. I'm not telling you the story about that, but it's part of my experiences, of course. Now, if we turn to the title of my presentation, it is Geopolitical Tensions and the Effects on Procurement Strategies. From geopolitical tensions to procurement strategies is a long way to go. It goes via supply chains. Sometimes it's related also to sales strategies, marketing strategies, depending where are your customers, things like that. And of course, it's all today much more companies are under a high competitive pressure, and they need to find the optimal way. But finding the optimal way today must obey different criteria as in the past. In the past, it was often a matter of cost, cost, cost. Today, there are many, and it makes it interesting as well. It makes it challenging, but also multidimensional, multi-criteria you have to consider. That has come into the picture much, much more. Things like, we talked about it just before, also corruption and governance is today on the agenda, definitely for bigger companies. So Geopolitical is actually not really a big company. It's 12,000 people, but of course it's much bigger than a lot of smaller companies that are part also of the supply chain of Geopolitical. So I dealt with and have experience with very big companies like ArcelorMittal, steel, like BASF, like Dow Chemical, the big players, but also, I say, the Papa and Mama company around the corner. you know, and they all have their own contribution, but they all require a completely different approach and behavior. Good. This is an overview of the topics I will show you. I don't want to explain that step by step. But we start with geopolitical tensions. Now, this is not something new. Maybe the word is new, but I picked up some, also a bit from my own history from the Netherlands and from Europe, of course. We had this situation 400 or 500 years ago with ships sailing out from Portugal, from Italy, from France, from the Netherlands, of course, from England in the first place, and doing mainly trade. Spanish, not to forget. And there were trade wars already, like you may see here. This is the city of Malacca that was first occupied by the Portuguese. Later, the Dutch thought this is a nice place, kicked out the Portuguese, and then later the British had the same thing and kicked out the Dutch. That is Malacca. Malacca will come here. Why is Malacca so important? And it is still a very important logistical place, or you might also say a trigger in international supply chain, because the Strait of Malacca, here come all the ships down from China and from Japan and from Korea. They all pass via Singapore south, and they pass to the Strait of Malacca. And today there's a lot of pirates that make the Strait of Malacca very, very dangerous. We'll come back at the end to that again. So this is also where history looks into today. Understanding that is not a bad thing. And also recently, much more recent, we see, and we can still see this today, an expression that you might not know of geopolitical tensions. But this is related to the China-Taiwan issue in the 90s. Not that long ago, in the 90s, the Chinese government said airlines that fly to Taiwan cannot fly anymore to Chinese destinations. Take it or leave it. If the Chinese say that, they do it. So there were some creative brains and said, okay, then we found another company, another airline, one that flies to China, and it flies to all countries of the world, but not to Taiwan. And another company, like here, Swiss Air, does not say, the Swiss Air with the Chinese character on it, very beautiful. I was a few times in that plane. And then KLM said, we found KLM Asia, allowed to fly to all countries of the world, but not China. So this plane, they flew to Taiwan, and the Swiss plane also. In the meantime, Swiss Air went bankrupt. It's called Swiss. They don't fly anymore to Taipei. KLM Asia still exists. I'm not sure if you see them here in Johannesburg or so sometime, but that's the background of it. And this is still done like that. Other airlines had similar companies, and actually this is just an expression of geopolitical tensions coming from the political level. And of course, China can do that because they're so big and so strong and such an economic power. Nobody wants to get rid of them. Then they would preferably sacrifice Taiwan. Good. Then let's have a look at overview, so still remain at the global level, not at the company level. I try to make a map of the main economic blocks in the world. NAFTA is, of course, America, with Mexico and Canada, and Lucius told me this morning about new tariffs that you do with your friends, apparently the US. It's a big block, of course, because the biggest world economy is still the United States of America. So NAFTA is huge. EU is huge with its satellite organization, if I may say so. EFTA, these are the countries in Europe that are not part of the European Union. Is it okay? Closer? Okay. Thank you. UK is there a little bit in the meantime after Brexit. I don't know where it is. I hope they know it themselves, but they're struggling. They're definitely struggling. And then we have ASEAN. These are European Asian, mainly Eastern Asian countries like Japan, or not Japan, but Malaysia, yes, Singapore, Thailand, Taiwan, etc. They are quite cooperating quite well. They are successful. They had created a lot of growth in the last couple of 30, 40 years. They are good. Then we have BRICS. Now, BRICS is for me a little bit difficult. I mean, South Africa is part of BRICS, but if I hear what I think that they're still far away from an economic or monetary or political close cooperation. And I think that will be difficult anyway because these countries, and don't talk about South Africa in the first place, but India, China, Brazil is more far away, also physically. They have so completely different interests. You see already in the European Union how difficult it is to get one point of view and decision with 27 without UK now, 27 countries, extremely difficult. Let's see. Then we have tried to find for where is South Africa. I think it's not part of a really overwhelming cooperation, economic program or economic cooperation with other countries, but there is this SADC. I don't know that much about it, honestly speaking. But basically it is good. It's always good to cooperate. And then in South America you have Mercosur. That is also not that big, but it's Brazil, it's Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and then some smaller satellite countries as well. That's the economic landscape global today. Now, if you look at, because we talk about geopolitical, and it includes economy, but it includes also military situation. I made this map, but this is even more challenging to make such a map. And still, sorry, and still I try to do that. Now, NATO is clear. NATO is most integrated, quite on one line. Also, thanks to Mr. Putin, they are more on a line of acting and behaving than ever before. You see some more or less, I don't call it satellites, but they are maybe closely in terms of values to NATO. That's Israel, that's Ukraine. And then at the right upper side, you see these mainly Asian countries that share the values or that are supported definitely also by the USA. And they have in common one common, call it fiend, maybe it's too big word, but that's China, of course. They're trying to counterbalance to China, as China is dominating, trying to dominate more and more the South Chinese Sea, building islands, building up military equipment there and infrastructure. Against that is also created this AUKUS, that is Australia, United Kingdom and America, and indirectly also New Zealand. India is, so far as I know, more standalone. Okay, it's big enough, it can afford to be standalone maybe. They have their own problems and challenges, of course, with Pakistan and Afghanistan and in that area. Brazil is, so far as I know, also military, speaking quite standalone. And then have the other countries. China, Russia, they cooperate now. China supports a lot of Russia in the war against Ukraine, unfortunately more and more. Same North Korea, Iran. They also supply weapons to Russia. And North Korea, of course, today we have North Korean soldiers in Europe. They are fighting at the Russian-Ukraine borders, and this is a dangerous time. Now you might think, where is South Africa? it's here, but I'm not aware of any big military alliances of South Africa. Although, of course, if you look on the map, you don't see the world map here, but they are quite, if I can say so, at a safer place. They are a little bit away physically, partially far away from, let's say, China, India, a bit less, but it's still far away. And it's, of course, not a very big economy that creates military interests or economic interests as well. So this is the background of all these geopolitical tensions, and this map might also change every day again a bit, at least the balance in these things. If you look at the next slide, this is an overview of threats to global supply chains. This is a list. I think we have mainly dominating, I think, is the tension between China and USA, or between USA and China. We know, and you know all about it, and this has not come to an end, not at all. With Trump coming, we all are asking, we have so many question marks: what will happen, what will he do, how will the others react, of course, how will China react. China has a lot to lose. I come on that later. At the moment, their economy is in extremely bad shape, and the Chinese party knows that if they lose on their economy and they are losing jobs, then the safety of the Communist Party is in danger. We've seen that already at the end of the COVID crisis, when people went onto the street, even with so many WeChat or, let's say, social media surveillance. If people go on the street, they go on the street. They leave maybe the mobile at home, and then you can stop it. If a million people go on the street in Beijing or in Shanghai, they can do nothing. And this is, of course, also what happened in Beijing that in '89. That was not the times of the social media yet. But if that would be a kind of a revolution, then China is in danger. So the Chinese cannot do everything they want. They have big interests. The Chinese party, not China, but the Chinese party, or even, I always say a little bit, when I was in meetings about China in Switzerland, I said we should not talk about China, we should talk about Xi Jinping. Because as the emperor, he is the big dictator. You can say that, you can use that word, and it's good to know. So another point is the Russia-Ukraine war. I mentioned it before. It seems to be a bit escalating. It's very, very dangerous. It's very dangerous. Just hope that there will not be used any nuclear weapons. Then China-Taiwan. Everybody is asking since many, many years, when will they attack? When will Xi attack Taiwan? I talked to a Taiwanese business friend last week, and I said, Sophia, what do you think? She said, yeah, we are not that afraid. And I have the idea that the Taiwanese themselves, they feel quite relaxed, relatively relaxed, and that the world around Taiwan worries much, much more. I personally also worry much more. Yeah, we don't know. But it's a tension, and if you see for economic tensions, you may say, maybe not buy that much anymore from China, buy from Taiwan. But Taiwan you have similar risks, you have very similar risks. So, South Chinese Sea, I mentioned it before, the Korean conflict, officially they are still in war. North and South Korea, this can pop up again every time, especially in the today's times. Then, if you look at the title, Threats to Global Supply Chains, then we definitely should, or I should mention the Houthi rebel situation in Yemen, the Djibouti, the ships they're crossing around this point, going up to the Suez Canal. This is a big danger. So many companies change the transportation ways. They go via the Cape. It takes a lot more time and cost, of course. And similar with the next point, or the pirates at the Somalian coast. This is again also growing, this danger. And many companies, and many like Maersk, one of the big shipping companies, they make today already a big a big curve around the Somalian coast to avoid the pirates acting there. Very dangerous and a big risk influencing supply chains. But if you cannot go via the Suez Canal, if you must sail around the Somalian coast, things are getting pretty costly and cost a lot of time. This all also means then, of course, that if you think about building up as a company your supply chain, and now I talk, of course, as seen from Europe, not seen from here or seen from United States. It's different. It's different. This brings me to about some international trade and other tangents. What does this imply? It implies that, or what we see actually, high tariffs, that's increasing. Trump announced that, Biden still continued them. The European Union is now thinking about a tax levy on import from Chinese electric cars and also solar panels. Just last week, one Swiss solar panel manufacturer, they had to bankrupt because they could not win the battle from Chinese companies. And of course, the Chinese government supports these companies with a lot of money. So these are uneven balances in competitiveness. Tax incentives, so export restrictions on ban. I'll show you a picture on that later. Tax incentives guiding import and export flows. You see this also worldwide. Even within Switzerland, there are cantons that try to promote to attract companies by tax benefits. International, now we have this at least this floor in the taxes for companies, 15% worldwide. This seems to work, but still there are a lot of exceptions. And of course, if a government wants to attract companies, they have a lot of other instruments how they can do that. A lot. Technical import barriers by specifications. You must fulfill this and this and these norms. New ESG laws is emerging mainly in Europe. There are a lot of ESG, so environment, social, and governance, including laws against corruption. If you see what companies in Europe, and there's a lot of bureaucracy, and there's also growing critic on that, have to you make now complete reports, and not just that's not three pages. That sometimes 100 pages. They have to report on this, on that. Not only the CO2 footprint, what they do against corruption. I noticed myself to deal with that also. How do you check that? Do you make audits at companies? How are you sure that, etc., etc.? This is coming up, and this is partly the result also of economic tensions and of economic partners not trusting each others. Or in certain countries, like also in Germany, the public or the population willing to have safe food, to have clean hands in international business, things like that. And of course, a big trend is also to a circular economy, and I think this plays also a role already in South Africa. Pretty sure about that. It's worldwide, and yeah. This is an example of how the USA uses its influence on export of high-tech technologies or high-tech. In this case, it's a company making the most advanced chip machines. Now here, China is not completely the best. They use that know-how, they use these machines, and the Americans are afraid that this will be then developed into a negative, and the Chinese are best in or very good in everything. They don't depend anymore on importing products and technologies and know-how from outside. This is a chip manufacturer from the Netherlands, ASML, and the Americans put pressure on the Dutch government and finally decided they cannot export anymore their machines to China. Complete ban. And this is just one example, of course. On the other hand, Chinese companies are let's say, are hampered by or in a negative position because many customers don't want to do business anymore with them, or not that much. Come back to that later. These are the changing strategies not only in Europe, but worldwide, also Australia. So I know an example of one Australian company that goes to another company making plastic parts for Australia, and said, can you please, and we talk about a millions contract, a 10-year contract, involving hundreds of people working on these orders. Say, stop, we don't want these products anymore coming from China because my customers don't like that. So Australia, they don't like that. Can you please make them in the future, from next year, in your factory in India? So Chinese are clever business people, extremely clever. They started already on a big scale, also because of import tariffs to the USA, building factories outside China. I mean, if it's made in Vietnam, or made in Thailand, or made in India or Malaysia, for instance, also cheap labor, even cheaper than in China in the meantime. They are building now, I know many companies, they're building factories in Vietnam, there, that company, or I visited this year here as a ceramics factory, very big, very good, high-level ceramics factory, Chinese manufacturer. They're building here. They were still in the process of building a factory in Thailand. And we're very happy to do that because labor costs are much lower, and the only problem is that productivity in China in the meantime is much higher. So at the end, labor cost per piece is more or less similar. But the customers want it, and they don't have to pay any import taxes to the USA and maybe to a few other countries. Global supply chains are complex, and sometimes when we buy a piece, or like even like this one, it's a Swiss brand, I see, Logitech, but it will be made in I don't know where. Some parts will be made here, other parts there. The electronics will most probably come from Asia or from China, probably Japan. The plastic parts may come from Eastern Europe. It will be assembled in I don't know where, Eastern Europe probably, or also in China. I don't know this. I know from Geberit that also our supply chains were getting more and more complex. You see, this is a supply chain just of a T-shirt, where the cotton comes from, let's say, Central Africa, then it goes to Jordan, it goes via Asia, via Bangladesh, going back to France. Sometimes what you see more and more is that locally, so in France in this example, they would do the final printing, the branding, because you want your own logo on it, something like that. That is then last step done, and this is complex. And this complexity means, of course, as you see, that the supply chains, they need a high level of coordination. It should be still payable, should be affordable, should be low cost or lowest possible cost, so that needs a high coordination. Usually you have 3 to 5 tiers, sometimes even more. I've seen myself up to 5 tiers, and you don't know, sometimes you know who is the second tier, but the third tier. It was just during the COVID period that I could visit 2 companies that were third tier. One was a chip manufacturer via special contacts, trying to secure your supply, to make it safe. And here you see with all internet and things, it's still a people business. Knowing a person, knocking on his door or her door, or having a call, like, can you help me? Sometimes it still works. So the importance of personal human contacts and relationships, and good relationships, of course, is still extremely important because there is trust involved. What you see also is, yes, it needs a tight balancing of capacities. We've seen it during the COVID times. Capacities, for instance, of transportation, of containers, of ships, are completely out of balance, also factories. Then the process itself is inflexible. That means cannot be changed, short-term, inflexible. You have certified lots, or the predefined quantities, lots, minimum order quantities, things like that. It all adds up to the complexity. And yeah, each step is a potential risk, in fact, that you must know. If you today, one of the big issues, and I think also here at the business school, supply chain risk management. This was not on my map 20 years ago. And 10 years ago, it maybe started after the financial crisis. You started to ask companies, suppliers, can I have your balance sheet? Quite reluctant. It's a secret. I must ask my mother. Sometimes people ask in small, medium family companies, or my father, 85. I must ask him if I can give this information. P&L statements. No, 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 no. I said, listen, if you want to be a customer of us also next month, you better show that you are safe, that you are in a financially sound situation. That gives us the trust. This is in your own interest. Then they sometimes open the book, sometimes not. This is an example, and I put here the name of my former company, of a supply chain, just to give you a little bit an idea about the complexity of just an electronic part. This can be this, or maybe also of a handy. This is about a sanitary appliance, like a faucet, or maybe a shower toilet, things like that, urinal manager. And you see where it starts with actually the machine from the Dutch company I showed you before, such a machine, the wafers. Then you need the components. You have active, passive components. The passive components always come from China. The active ones also from China, but also from Korea, South Korea, of course, or from Taiwan, or from Japan, so already a little bit more developed in terms of technology. Then you have a distributor market, and this is the distributor market, or distributors, that's why it's distributor market. And the distributors, they play an important role. They are not just like a supermarket. They distribute, they do the logistic, that's it. They allocate. They allocate. And being friends with them in terms of shortage, and there's no market that goes more up and down as electronic parts. And the prices accordingly. I've seen dramas here to getting, you know, also for the sewing machines, to get chips for the sewing machines. And the quantities were small. And all these manufacturers are very, very big. And then you have the distributors. They do allocation. One time I had to sign a contract for 2 years, pay in advance, and else no chips. Now go with that story to your board. They love you. And you cannot change it. It's take it or leave it. Even if you're a very good negotiator, you can help a little bit, yes, but very, very complicated. And then finally you have the first tier suppliers. That is usually better under control. So the first tier suppliers you know, you have contacts with, contacts and contracts. They are usually, for this kind of parts, not the very biggest companies. We had some German companies that did it very well, not that big compared to us, even a bit smaller. Then, of course, if you buy standard motors, like Johnson Motors from China, you're a small number, a very small number. This is a little bit more abstract to show, excuse me, yes, please.
If I may, I wanted to ask, given all these geopolitical tensions and economic tensions, do you think it's still wise for companies to still do international trade, bank transfer, payment, and advice? Is it still wise to do so, or rather they should just change the payment methods to cater to minimize the risks?
Change the payment?
Yes, to minimize the risks involved with open account bank transfers.
Well, there are different solutions indeed. What you see today a lot is also supply chain finance. I'm not a big fan of that, but this can be, depending on these are these terms, you know, and the shortage on the market is so big that most customers accept that. That's a problem. If all would join and not accept it, but the market is too scattered to do that. And then, of course, there are still ways of financing it to improve your own liquidity or cash situation, but I never found one bank that does that for free. So this means these are services and they have a value, but it always costs money. So my company, my Geberit, it was a company very cash rich, very profitable, and they could afford that. But you must first be in a situation to be able to afford that. Still, the situations where you're asking about, very difficult to avoid. Very difficult to avoid. Fortunately, this is not the biggest part of the sales of the one I saw before, but it's still very, yeah. It is also a little bit, you are human beings. How do you feel in such a situation? Take it or leave it. No, nobody feels happy if you're treated like that. At least I don't. But it was my job, and you have to do that in a professional way and still get a way out, find a solution. And sometimes finding a compromise. Compromises are not that good, but sometimes if you don't have another alternative, you must. What we see here is, you know, from the warehousing, maybe in Rotterdam or in Hamburg, way back here, the Suez Canal, you might remember that case, going back to the production sites, that might be in China, then going to the processing capacities. This is already very much upstream, petrochemical industry, and then you go to the mining. Then we are close by. Mining. Sorry?
Yeah, I just want to ask a question.
Yeah, please, yes. Yeah, please.
Yes, Prof. No, thank you for the wonderful presentation. I've noticed that most of your presentation, when you talk about supply chain and the risks and danger, it centers around China, US, Europe, maybe Taiwan. My question, therefore, is that what is the role of Africa in this global supply chain complex? Is there a role for Africa? Is there a place for Africa? Because we are in Africa. We want to get into this. Is there a role for Africa? Is there a place for Africa? And why is it that Africa keeps remaining a source of raw material, but the processing, manufacturing, and value addition all is in this major global player? And what can we do to improve our current standing?
Yes, I come to that later at the end. Is it okay to wait a bit? I prepared a few slides. The answer is not that difficult for me, but it's still interesting. So if you look at about points that are troubling supply chain managers, and also here, by the way, all industrial companies. This was an inquiry under Swiss CPOs very recently. What is plaguing in the mass? What are the topics today on their map in terms of risk management? Then what is the probability of occurrence, and what is the loss potential? You see all these issues that don't go into detail, but I think it is it is increased a lot. And I think also complexity here has increased a lot, because if you do export, like the wine business or also mining, you have to do much more proof of this and that, and no child labor, and environmentally safe, and CO2 footprint, and keeping to these and that laws. It is increasing and increasing. Besides the risk of wars, military conflicts, maybe natural disasters coming more and more. I think here a bit less probably, not that I'm aware of, but you may have heard about the disasters in Spain a few weeks ago. Yeah. So strategies, procurement strategies, what can we do? Now, to give you a pre-answer already, Prof. Joseph, is that that's the reason I did not mention also Africa so far. In my supplier portfolio was not one African supplier. Why? I'll come back to that later, because there's a reason for that. We see that the concept of multiple sourcing relieves the stress to buy from one single supplier. And I learned it myself that multiple sourcing, or at least dual sourcing, is a very good strategy that can be implemented much more. Should be, must be implemented much more to reduce risks and dependencies. You can do China plus one. Companies now dependent on China. I know many also, and I have a few friends in South Africa have their own company. They source a lot from China, but only from China. Now this is changing, and I think it should change to China, at least to China plus one. If you still want to buy from China, China is still a very competitive economy. The labor costs are higher in the meantime, not that low anymore, but productivity has grown. It's highly robotized. They're highly robotized in the meantime. Local for local, that's always good. We did it also at Geopolitical, by the way. Another pre-answer. I was here once for business, for Geopolitical, and we're building up, this is local for local. It depends on the quantities, of course, on the volume. It was about, if you have polyethylene pipes, they are, and you see them on the South African market, they are made in Olifantsfontein, huh? Yes, Olifantsfontein. I've been there a whole week, building up the supplier. He was really willing to invest, and that makes then related and supported by, say, import duties, makes it possible. But of course, here you have an extrusion line. It's a big investment, so you need a quantity. And then you have the pipe, you have 12 dimensions. So this adds up to the complexity. And for each and every dimension, so the size of the not the length, but the diameter of the pipe, you need to change the machine. You need another tool. Costs a lot. You cannot do that for just a few meters of pipe. So, but he did it and he invested, and it's quite a success. And of course, for Geopolitical sales organization in South Africa, say this is made in South Africa. This is also a selling argument that could be used, that should be used. Other countries do this maybe even more. I'm not sure about here, but I think you should do that. Nearshoring, if possible, so bring the volume that you source back to your own country, if that is possible, or at least the region. Friendshoring is more and more a topic, so you buy from companies you're kind of friends with, close, that are in your same area and where you share values, not friends in the sense that you go party every night, but in the sense of you share values, you cooperate, you have a very open cooperation in terms of information exchange, things like that. And then, of course, what's often forgotten, and my company, Geopolitical, they have a big tradition of insourcing. So before we said, yeah, we make Supplier in Olifantsfontein, can we not make it ourselves? Then the question could be, where is the factory located? But of course, based on the volume, again, the volume is not so big that we would build 10 extrusion line factories or pipe extrusion factories all over the world, or in Europe, Africa, and in Asia. Still, these are the strategic options for procurement. Then you have non-procurement options. That is typical. You can change the design, you can go to standardization, then there is less know-how involved. You say, yeah, but the functionality, the quality might suffer from that. Yes. On the other hand, the engineers should also be a little bit stimulated to be innovative. This creates also innovativeness and innovations. So it's not that bad at all. Recycling, of course, is good. Fits to the picture of today. Additive manufacturing with 3D. Here, you cannot do that with big quantities. This needs smaller quantities. Then additive manufacturing, 3D printing also known, is attractive, or can be more attractive. You see this in Europe more and more for smaller quantities, or to start up and get the experience. When the product is a success on the market, then you change to, let's say, classical manufacturing. And of course, a standard answer, a recipe since hundreds of years is create buffers, stocks, which is not very welcomed by the financial people, of course. It means a lot of money, working capital involved, but yeah. Of course, strategically, maybe speed up with this one. It's not, it looks nice, but this is the strategic alternatives put on this matrix. What you can do, you can expand, you can reduce, you can avoid, of course, and you can do more near sourcing. And then based on where your supply portfolio, so every company should make a supply portfolio with suppliers and with materials, with the quantities, and then decide on your strategy. This is this kind of picture, and you can use it also how to deal with geopolitical tensions and the changes, the strategic changes involved with that. Then you can see here you have several, I have 2 slides, I don't go into the details, but you see the different horizontally action fields, what you can do. And then you see the risk of, how effective it is. So you see the risk there vertically, and you can say a good answer for military incidents would be, or for things like COVID, a very good strategy would have been buffer. That's why it's dark green. You have light green and lighter, very light green. And so you can make a map, and based on that, try to reconfigure your procurement strategy and portfolio. Very interesting to do. It was done by Professor Lehmann from the University in Graubünden, one of the smaller areas in Switzerland with a lot of mountains and snow. But they are doing a great job. And I asked him, can I use your slide and change it a little bit? Very interesting to use as a tool when thinking about your company strategy at the procurement side. People usually focus strongly on marketing strategy, on sales strategy, and I think that the procurement strategy is getting more and more important to assure the supply. Now, global trends in the strategies is a general start of a deglobalization. There might be an offer, not an offer, an opportunity also for more local economic areas to get stronger, stressing the independence of other regions. So like in Southern Africa, they have actually also geographically and in terms of cost, I think, very attractive, a lot of potential, but there needs a lot to be done, yes, and we need a lot to be done. But it's possible. If that homework is done, there's a bright future. I'm convinced of that. I'm really convinced of that. And I've come here to this country for many, many years. It just goes too slow, If I compare always to Lucius yesterday, my benchmark is then maybe it's not a fair benchmark, and on the other hand, it is a fair benchmark. Also, I've been to China the first time in the mid of the 90s, and I came here at the end of the 70s as a cyclist, and I see how China leapfrogged many countries, including South Africa. So then go to in all the details. If you see a topic you want to ask about a question, please do. What in the middle you see the establishment of parallel, redundant, and resilient supply chains. This is what Apple did in China. Apple got very afraid of being so dependent of China, and of course they have huge volumes. They have so huge volumes, they can afford to build up a dual or a hybrid supply chain. So they have now a supply chain for their Chinese market, with a lot of Chinese suppliers, of course, and they have a non-Chinese supply chain, or they're working on that. They're building it up. So they have alternatives. They got much more resilient, as you say today, much more short-term flexible also. The dependencies are clearly reduced. If this is a free lunch, there are no free lunches. Of course, there's no free lunch. You always pay with one or another thing. You have to pay. But this today, the values are put very, very differently. Today, companies are willing to pay more money and reduce the risk, like an insurance premium, more or less. You can compare that. Yeah. Now, I thought I have to answer probably a question coming about South Africa and the relevance from South Africa, and of course I realized that. Also knowing that my knowledge of the South African economy is limited. It's always in talks with Lucius. I have a few other friends, know the wine industry a little bit more. And I knew, and this was confirmed when I said, let me look for the top 10 South African companies. And I thought, I found this list. And here you see mainly the finance sector, some mining and telecommunication, and I knew that as well, very well developed retail industry with ShopRite, with a lot of others, very well developed. What you do not find here, this is a direct answer to your question, are industrial companies. Now, why are there no industrial companies? Because I know that from, let's say, I call it the dark times of apartheid, you had to build up, you were forced to build up your own infrastructure of companies. That's why you have here some car industries, some petrochemical industries. However, they never develop to companies that are internationally competitive. And this is also what I found out. I once asked my friend, a South African guy living in Cape Town or close to, he has his own plastic manufacturing company. And I said, can I offer you a part, plastic part to make for you, for Geberit? I said, yes, here are the drawings, please calculate. And the drawings are not standard, it's quite highly qualified, but he studied plastics engineering in Switzerland. That's why I know him, by the way. So he makes it with Swiss precision, highest level of quality, very good machines coming from Germany. We'll visit him again next week. Perfect. And he made a price calculation. I said, Adriaan't, this is, and I compared it not with suppliers, I compared it with our own price, because we make these parts ourselves, even in Switzerland, yes, not famous for being cheap. We make them in our factory in Switzerland, and compared to the manufacturing cost, full cost, absorption cost, with what he offered. And he didn't have a huge margin, not at all. And so how is this possible? And then it has to do with productivity, not that much with labor costs, but still, maybe the labor costs are still too high in an international competitive environment. And this, I mean, also this company in making the pipes, they were not really cheaper. But then the advantage was more a logistical advantage. We don't need to ship down all the pipes and you're shipping air. CO2 is a disaster to ship pipes around the world. You cannot do that, I would say. So we said, yeah, local for local, but we did not save really much money. But we still did it for other reasons, which are valid reasons, also from a business point of view, very valid, definitely also from a marketing point of view. I never, and I tried every now and then to build up relationships, buying parts for the local market, but the market is for Geberit big enough. The South African market is the qualities are small. And this is the answer to your question, is that the economy for export industry, for industrial manufacturing, this is what we talk about. Not about finance or mining, is anyway a different story, I think. This is still, and not only South Africa, also other African countries, even in northern Morocco or Egypt, it's not there. The companies are just not there at a competitive level. I still think there are now trends, and I know that one country where Geberit is quite successful in terms of sales is Nigeria. And that, what I hear from that, and I will meet my export friend from the company next week in Cape Town, he was responsible for building up the African market, sales. But he knows the differences between all the countries, and where we are, where Geberit is successful and where less. And he had interesting stories about Nigeria also, people investing, people, young people, startups, a lot of know-how, very driven, and I think that goes the right way. And I think if limited now again to South Africa, needs to have a similar drive. What I heard this morning when we talked only shortly, but your ideas about, you know, with young people, with building up, that sounds good. But of course, it must then be on a bigger scale. It must be at a bigger scale, and I'm willing to help here as well. Then your answer could be, your question could be answered in a way that first make you locally stronger, reduce reduce imports, and then, of course, increase export. And this, of course, also related to the volatility of the rand. The rand is very volatile. Now, for export, that is good. But for import, of course, it's a catastrophe. So you still have to import a lot of raw materials. Even if you have Sasol, your own manufacturer, but still a lot must be imported, IT parts, etc., etc. And that is, of course, suffering from the export, from the currency rates. That is clear. So it is quite complex, but I don't need to tell you that. And it goes step by step. And nevertheless, I think it should now take off, speed up, and yeah, it's really possible. So recommendations for South African companies, and maybe less for banks and more for industrial companies like my friend, making plastic parts for cosmetic industry mainly. I think develop, as I said before already, regional supply chains. Make sure you're surrounded by companies from the region, as I say, Southern Africa, or maybe more, where you have close cooperations, where you have close, not only trustful relationships that you know, that you have a close relationship with. Finally, also in business, you're talking about people. We talk about numbers and numbers and numbers, and numbers are dry and boring. But finally, I found out the best results you have when you have good relationships with suppliers, even if the supplier sometimes says, it's just a supplier. No, that's a wrong approach. Supplier is also a human being, and having a trustful relationship with suppliers is very, very important. I think this must be built up, and this is an approach, Joseph, also, that is maybe, you will not read it in the first place in a book, because the academic studies or scientific studies, they focus more on other things. I talk a bit about the social psychology, and that's my experience of doing business. How to deal with the suppliers and with other stakeholders in the company as well. It's very important. And with all digitalization, I think this is a little bit in danger, is my experience. So, okay, cooperate with other companies in the region. I mentioned that, yes. Focus on risk management. This remains important in the international field, but also in a local field, I think. You must take care much more about risk management. How healthy are my suppliers, or my customers as well, by the way? Can they pay the invoices? And how do you deal with that? And sometimes it's better, and after what I said before about trustful and how to treat, sometimes you must do it still quite tough. You must know when to do what. So sometimes you must say, then learn it the hard way. You cannot stop talking and recommanding and things like that. Digital procurement tools, yes, that improve a lot productivity, operational day-by-day processes, strengthen, of course, energy resilience, invest in renewable energies, but this is a recommendation not only for South Africa but worldwide. But I think knowing a little bit the power situation, the background in South Africa, this is of course also not giving trust. Internationally, availability, how long can you deliver? Yeah, we did not have power, delays. You know, this is then in the supplier evaluation matrix. As I developed myself, this brings no points. This brings no good points. Support and enable startups. We created about very shortly before. Strong startups with well-educated people, like here from the business school. And I think if they have a little bit, or more than a little bit, an entrepreneurial spirit, and then it created dynamics, a positive dynamics, and a stream upward. That everybody will benefit from that. What we learned from COVID, but maybe this is not really the biggest topic here, but I'm sure you have your ideas about it also. Be careful with just-in-time and lean. I think if you want to have, you need some buffer, some oil in your supply chains to overcome the disruptions of supply chains. We learned that is very important. If you, and one of the benefits or the strong points of Geberit was they always could supply. Although they did not have overstock. But they always had some buffers somewhere at the supplier side or their own. They always could deliver A customer never had to wait longer than, in 95% of the cases, or longer than 2 days in Europe. And it came sometimes from the central warehouse in Germany. So we had also accordingly high-performing suppliers of logistical services. And I think this is, this must go all hand in hand. You cannot just improve one aspect or another. It must be the whole supply chain, the whole supply chain, the whole performance chain must be like an oiled machine. Good. Outlook. The elephant in the room. I mentioned it, or him already, of course. We don't know what this will bring. Nobody knows it. Even he himself doesn't know it, probably. But this can create a lot of troubles worldwide. And I'm a positive. I'm a human being with a very positive attitude, but here I have some worries as well, I have to say. I'm not that optimistic anymore as I have been related to what this will create worldwide. So we will see. Everything else is speculation, I think. I think that what we will see is that we will see higher levels of resilience in supply chains. This must be built up. Companies are urged to do that also, South African companies. They must take care much more of supply chains. Increasing levels of uncertainties will be there. There definitely will be. There will be the importance, I mentioned that already, the importance of the procurement function is growing, is strongly growing. And I always felt that purchasing or procurement, let's say, on the agenda in companies is not that high as it should be. Usually there are no procurement guys in the executive board, but this is changing now. It must change because it's in many companies they are responsible, and when Lucius mentioned that also, the volume I was responsible for, it is 60% of the P&L, 60%, much more than labor cost, than people cost. So. And this is not going less, has been growing due to increasing prices. This is critical and must be addressed accordingly. Contractions in global supply chains, yes, I think that the deglobalization I mentioned already, due to all the risk and uncertainties and increasing costs. I mean, buying from China means also to here or to Europe higher CO2 footprint. This is very clear, and people will be urged to reduce that. Then buy more local, do more nearshoring. That improves your CO2 footprint. Then. The beneficiaries of, and I think that the volume internationally bought in China will go back, for mainly, not because they're not competitive, but many countries are getting a little bit afraid from China. And China is feeling this themselves now. They are not really trying everything to win back market share, to win export orders. Companies are getting afraid a little bit, are feeling a bit worried. The beneficiaries of that would be countries like India, I'll give you an example before, the Southeast Asian countries, Eastern Europe. What about South Africa? Absolutely a justified question, of course. I wrote it down. Can they benefit? I'm absolutely positive about that. But that is, of course, not a free lunch. There must be a lot of homework. But I think what I hear from you today, what I've seen in a very short time, but also what I heard from Lucius, not only yesterday, but also since a longer time. Also my contacts I have in and around Cape Town. What I hear from the managing director of Geopolitical, South Africa in Johannesburg, it looks good. It looks better than it has done, but it's still a long and winding road. And so far, will a little bit of picture from my area. Will supply chains get more stable? No, they will not. It's realistic. It will be stormy, so to hope for that would be a stormy hope. And this is a reality we have to focus and deal with and handle with. And I think it's very important task also of a business school. Dealing with risk, people hate risk. People hate risk. Many people cannot deal with being insecure, unsure. They cannot handle that. That's why I said before, CEO, when we were at, I don't have his name now, is it we talked about shortly about the crystal ball. CFO, CEO came to me every month. They want to know the copper price in a year. I say, if I would know that, I would not be working here. That's for sure. And this is even, the volatilities are more increasing, energy, things like that. So it will remain unstable, a stormy sea. And in this sense, I like to say thank you very much. And of course, I'm very happy to get your questions.
One is a remark and one is a question. I've just noticed, and this is for all of us, that South Africa is becoming the dumping ground for Chinese products. All the different cars and things is just popping up left, right, and centers. Bad quality, not good quality. Botswana is the dumping ground for second-hand cars. We're the dumping ground for new cars, which they can't sell. Botswana, as part of the SADC, is generally so, is a dumping ground for second-hand cars. You can buy a Volkswagen Golf TSI, and you can just use your credit card and swipe. That's how cheap it is. The main question then, what I actually ask is, where does AI, artificial intelligence, fit into this whole business?
Okay. First, comment back on the quality of the stuff coming from China. This is a big misunderstanding. And I'm a little bit sharp here probably, but I made my own experiences. Why do we get cheap quality from China? Because we don't require better qualities. The specifications are not accordingly made. We bought, and you can buy best, highest level product from China, but you must ask for that. You must qualify it. If you as a customer here say cheap, 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 yes, then you get it cheap, cheap, cheap. So and now, Europe is overflooded by Temu, I guess here too. Extremely, it's terrible. Temu, they are now being charged by the Swiss government because they also don't take it very serious with import regulations. So if you buy 10 pieces, they send you 10 times 1 because they don't have to fulfill the import duties and things like that. That's not good. But about the quality, you know, it is, I've made my experience myself, and you must invest in supplier management. You must go there and show exactly this is the quality level we want to do. This is good, this is not good. The Chinese more, they work visually more than drawing. They have like to see a sample, things like that. So this is, let's say, a mixed story about the quality. About AI is, I think we should not expect too much from AI. So AI can help in administrational processes. So if I said about digitalization, the purchasing process or the logistic processes, doing risk analysis can be a big, big help. But of course, I cannot make a ship go faster through the sea, to say a little bit black and white answer. But AI can help. But I think like for South Africa, don't expect that now AI solves all the problems. It will not. Also, to get AI working, you know, there must be a basic infrastructure, there must be knowledge, there must be willingness to work with it. And of course, when it's about translating contracts, extremely good. I have now slides, so let's just explain via, translate via DeepL. It's highest quality. I'm surprised myself to see the quality level. So here, efficiency, also some bureaucratic processes can be improved a lot. Legal systems can be improved a lot, made much more intelligent, or efficient, sorry. Efficient, maybe more than intelligent. Because what I Google, I also did with ChatGPT, asked some question about what are your recommendations for the African economy in purchasing. I wanted to check that. I didn't want to talk anything wrong. Now, it is not put me from my chair. I could have, there was nothing, well, no added value. I knew this already anyway. And I said I talked about that with my wife, and I said, listen, you can now replace the recommendations. They write for South Africa. You can replace by Chile, by Thailand, by Romania, by Mexico. You know, they're too general. And there's much more, there are a lot of differences between the countries I mentioned before, with the economic parameters and the ways how to improve. So this is still far away. I don't know how it is in 5 years. I personally, my personal statement is don't expect too much. Yes, it has a rich potential. Yes, it's improving all the time again, but don't expect any miracles or wonders. Miracles.
Yeah, my first is an observation. If you think of Donald Trump, I think the fact that China holds about 10% of America's treasury bonds is probably our solution. Because America has actually got, or China has actually got America by the, I don't want to call it the scrotum, but they've got him. They've actually got more power over America, and I think this whole geopolitical shift in power is more profound than we thought. My second observation is I think all these wars won't stop because it's culling. There are simply too many people, and it's an unpopular statement, but there are simply too many people on Earth. So it's kind of, that's why the people start behaving totally irrational. What's your thought of that, on that? What's your thought?
Finance a lot of American debt. That's why they have the. I'm not in the position to repeat what you said, but I understood it. Yeah, you know. And still the balance is to the benefit of the USA. Because the dollar, we talked about it yesterday, the dollar is international currency. And no matter what BRICS wants and things like that, you know, it's a little bit, if the Chinese dominate it, yes, but then the others must follow. The Indians must follow, and the Brazilians must follow, and South Africa must follow, how can I forget them? The Russians must follow as well. And these economies, and not only economies, they are so diverse. You've seen in Europe with the euro, what that creates for a stress. With companies benefiting a lot. Germany was the big beneficiary. They needed less, but they were the big benefits because the euro was weak. And why was it weak? Because of Spain and Italy and you know, in the past, Italy, Spain, they could just devaluate their lira, their peso, and they had quiet for 5 years. Just gradually going down. That you see also with the rand. So if the macroeconomic parameters are not at a similar line, like depth of a country, you will never manage to have a common currency. Getting rid of the dollar, I would love it. Speak from the heart now. I really would love it, like the oil price. But yeah, we must be also a little bit realistic, you know. And I think that the Americans benefit from that. And I think that at the moment, the Chinese, and I see these companies I talk to still have a lot of contacts. The Chinese companies, also the private economy companies, are very afraid of losing business in America. I talked to this one friend, he was at my meeting too, how she called him last week. I said, how is your business in America doing? He said, oh, very different. And he has his own company in America, just distribution. I said, but the market is very weak. Some markets are anyway worldwide very weak now. Now with this coming more, also the image of the Chinese worldwide is going down, you know. Because of, if you see, I was visiting a university a few months ago. They said academic, this is another topic, but it still relates. academic freedom. China, the lowest 20%. There's no more academic freedom. And you see that how people are monitored, and this is big in the press in Europe. It's big, and people get the negative. Also, the end consumer, he still likes his Temu product, very, very cheap, but this is going down. So the positive image of China and of made in China is going down again. And other countries can benefit from that. So India has not a strong image in the sense of good or bad. People would accept that, would be willing to do that. With a lot of other countries, South Africa would, I'm sure, if they had the economic power to do so, would have a positive benefit. South Africa in Europe has a positive image, of course, because of nice holiday country, because of the nice wines that I promote also a bit. But still, the image of South Africa in Europe is rather positive. Now, benefit it, you know. And is this an answer to your question?
I have a question as well. The whole new platform economy. If you think of Amazon that sits in America, and I think Amazon in South Africa is more hype than anything else. But Amazon sits in America, and now they shift products from a South African producer to a South African customer. How does that affect global supply chains?
Well, the supply chain itself is interesting, is good for South Africa. Even if Amazon is in between, but it will be Amazon South Africa. And of course, Amazon has a huge international platform. They have software to do that, to handle that extremely efficient. They can, of course, enter into that local supply chain, products coming from outside. So books from, I don't know, other languages, or no matter what products, spare parts, I don't know. So they will mix it with the local South African supply chain. I think that by itself it's good. And then let's hope that now and then they also export some South African products and sell that in America, for instance. This would be, of course, but they do that only if that proposition is attractive. If that product has the required quality, it starts with that, but of course also is competitive in terms of price and tariffs, things like that. Basically, my answer on your question would be, I see this positive. Because Amazon employs people here, South African people, you know, so they create also jobs.
Okay, so you talked about enabling and supporting startups. So maybe if you can take a deep dive on that, and then maybe just a little bit, and then maybe also kind of give tips or maybe insights for how startups can be sustainable, specifically in the Southern African context.
How much time you give me?
5 minutes or less.
Because this is an extremely interesting topic, but, and I can say a few words, of course, and I will, but you can dive, you said it already correctly, you can dive deep. And I think it is, I was dealing also in the past with startups, but not that much at all. I have now another engagement at Bern University where I'm dealing a lot with people that have already a startup. I'm supporting one of them, or want to start startups. And here, it starts with founding a company. And first of all, I think if I can say just a very few things about that, they should be careful not to focus only on, let's say, engineering or techniques. They are technical freaks. They have an idea, and they forget about all the other things. So whenever they start, if they are successful, they start growing, they forget about supply chain, they forget about an HR organization, their accounting department, they do it maybe then in the middle of the night, do a few postings, and when they grow, the processes and the quality and the reliability of the process does not grow accordingly. And they might survive that, or they might not survive that. Most of them, they die again very short because they were too optimistic on the market, or they didn't do their homework in a balanced way. So this needs, how to get this know-how, because they have 3 engineers and have a brilliant product ID, and they start up. Now who's taking care of the other topics? They must take care of it. Or an external company, that's usually not for free of course, but they must do this. They must hire temporary, maybe a professional accountant, usually also a lawyer today is involved, where you have to make clever contracts. I've seen contracts that I must say, my God, I'm not a legal person, but I know my way around with contracts. It's very, very important. One word can make a lot of difference. They must be very careful on all these details, and they are not interested in that because they're engineers. They want to do the bits and the bytes and not the legal stuff. But they cannot do without. And they cannot also not do without the other things, including a supply chain. Of course, if you make software or a software application, it's easier. You don't have that much physical stuff to move. But yeah, so and then you will have some specific things from South Africa, but I don't know that enough. The legal environment, what they should do. I think the basic topics are the same. The fundamental topics will be very similar. I mean, this is a free economy. That helps a lot. And that's a very good thing. But still you have the local topics related to local laws and culture and logistical infrastructure, things like that.
Prof, I think mine is quite the contrary of startups. I believe, and I'll make reference to some companies that I've done my own research on, like the Beef Master Group. If you look at current beef itself, they have established a very well ecosystem when it comes to exporting beef, in a sense. How do we then empower businesses that already have efficient processes in place to mitigate their way around international trade and being able to become more efficient in the procurement process, like logistical-wise and transportation?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Oh, the question was, how do we empower companies that already have a base that need to grow exponentially in the international?
The companies you said going up, or what?
Going up, like
growing up,
growing up and exponentially. They already have an ecosystem that's financially feasible to do international trade. For example, current beef itself.
Yeah, that's difficult to answer. If you look at the more financial point, I mean, the good thing in general, I must keep very general now, but because I don't know all these things, I know that, and I mentioned that at least, and this is good also for startups, I think in South Africa, you have a very strong financial sector. And this might also mean also for startups, finding venture capital. I don't say it's easy. I don't say that at all, but at least the financial infrastructure is there. And let's hope there's also some money of people that want to invest. The banks will not usually do that themselves, I guess. And I would be happy if they don't do that, because banks should not take risks. They won't have to take care of our money that we can pay each other. And that they maybe do some mortgages and things like that, but not go into big risks. So I personally see no role here for banks, but of course to enable it and to guide the money streams, also coming from outside, I hope. People willing to invest, and this is allowed, I guess. It's not like in China, there are a lot of restrictions and laws and so. This would be, and it's a good approach to look at that as well, and to see how this can be mobilized because usually, I didn't mention this in my answer to her, but of course usually a lot of startups make a lot of loss at the beginning. So I know about several pharmaceutical startups, and they make millions of loss. And they always have some sugar daddy that helps them. Yeah, like a rich guy, he was very successful with his pharmaceutical company, and he sold his company to Johnson & Johnson. He earned billions, a very rich guy. And he started then, or he supported a new startup. And I read there in the meantime at the stock market in Zurich. And I said, oh, maybe it would be interesting to buy such a stock. Then I looked at their numbers, at their profit and loss. My God, they make more loss than turnover. So here you have to find, and this is high risk because you must invest a lot in research and development, product development for medical, pharmaceutical. And this is dependent on what business you are in with your startup. But finance is, I cannot give here in 5 minutes a general answer, but it's extremely important. And but I positively think that in South Africa, based on, when I showed the top 10, and I know there are many good banks, really very efficient, well-working banks, I see this as positive.
Professor, just for my learned friend here. His question is in connection with the meat market. Karen beef is meat market. It's, beef. And in South Africa, we have a lot of rules and regulations around fresh product, especially beef and chicken, and for importing and exporting. And there's a whole international thing going on with America, Australia, and the rest of Africa, even our next door neighbor Namibia, and Botswana. So it's a very gray area. Even in South Africa, moving across borders, we have a lot of dreaded diseases for animals.
Yeah.
So that makes it very, very difficult in the farming environment. And the movement also of animals. Our animals can't move from north to south. There's a plant that kills them. They can go east and west, and they can south to north, but not the other way around. So there's a lot of tricks of the trade that we have to learn, and there's a lot of rules and regulations. It's not just easy for a startup and say, okay, now I'm successful.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, understand. And these regulations are getting more and more tough because I love to eat ostrich meat, and I bought it every now and then in Swiss supermarkets or also in Germany. And then there was some sickness I heard about, and now since years already I don't see it anymore. And it was a niche market, but still people loved it. It was big supermarkets had it, so that means there was a market. But I look every now and then, but it's completely disappeared. It has to do with the sickness as well. And then the question is how to handle that, how fast you can recover, maybe reconquer that market. Sometimes markets, when you're gone, when you lost it, you lost it.
And the stigma. The stigma is very, very high, because everybody thinks swine flu, if you have swine flu, you get it from swines, which is that stigma that we had. Even Corona beer. I said, well, if you drink Corona beer, get the coronavirus.
Thank you, Mine Kutsi. I think the agricultural sector has its own what we call standardizations. We call it standardization and phytosanitary regulations guiding that. So thank you very much, colleagues. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for coming, especially to our professor of practice. I think today is a start, it's a good beginning. I think this is one of our first inaugural lecture that we have had in the school. So it's a very good start, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for coming.
Pleasure, big pleasure. Thank you very much for attending.
You are very welcome. I won't end without acknowledging the role of Professor Lucius from the faculty, because his experience in a lot of things within the research office has been invaluable, from recruiting our postdocs to guiding our research and the research quality from the faculty's side. All the support comes through Professor Lucius, and we can't do anything when it comes to research without him. And the business school, from my side, I want to thank you for those support. You have always been at the background assisting. in guiding us. And to our professor of practice, I just want to say this is Professor Adriaan't. This is a very good beginning, and we hope that this particular trend will continue. Visiting us for the first time, we can't just say goodbye, or we can't just say, we have to make you feel at home. And probably there will be some small gift that we are going to give to you as an acknowledgement or as a token of appreciation for you coming down. And we hope we'll keep working together in the future, and great things will come to bear in the future. So Prof. Adriaan't, you are welcome. And on behalf of the business school, Northwest University Business School, this is a token from the business school.
Thank you very much.
As a show of appreciation. Thank you. To add on, I think Prof. Lucius also had something for you from the faculty side, the Faculty of Economics and Management Sciences. So I will allow him to present the token to you. Perhaps you want to say some word.
Just one sentence. I found this in an old bookstore in Johannesburg. It's a book by Lappe Laupscher on the rapporteur, a book that is in Afrikaans, Art can understand and reads Afrikaans as well. But it's basically on the Tour de France of South Africa, you know, commemorating it. And when my wife actually found the book, because I asked her, she's moving around a lot, you know, as a marketing person for a medical company. When she opened it, there was a lot of loose pictures in some of the famous riders as well. So I think it will be very special in his cellar in Winterberg near Zurich for him too. So that's just to say congratulations and thank you for. Thank you.
Lucius?
Unfortunately, 76, 77 before you did.
Okay. Okay, colleagues, thank you very much. I think we have organized something for you next door. There's coffee, there's tea, there are some snacks for you. Please network, interact with one another, and enjoy your afternoon or your morning. Thank you very much for coming, and have a lovely day.